Hello, ladies and gentlefolk, nerds of all shapes and sizes. It's me, the old geek, once again. And this video is inspired by a little bit of miscommunication, stemming from a throwaway comment, originally coming from a piece of belligerent obstinacy. Confused? Hopefully you won't be. During my last stream, I stated that it was impossible to play 1st edition AD&D entirely by the book. Yes, I know strictly following the words of Gygax, straying from the precise rules, is by the book, as he frequently wrote that DMs had the ultimate say about their own games. But some people cling on to his words, and I was recently told that if I used an adapted initiative system, then I was no longer playing 1st edition AD&D, and I believe that person was being serious. 1st edition AD&D is notoriously full of rules vagaries, snippets that appear on the surface to be inconsistencies or even contradictions. Now, some might be typos, but there are plenty of situations where the rules lack total clarity. It's the style of Gygax's writing. These have fueled debates ever since the game appeared, and every old school gaming forum has descended into pitched battle at some point, with grogs defending their own interpretations vociferously. I've done it. That's all part of being a grog. Sometimes answers can be found, or at least more evidence pointing towards answers, even if that evidence is not always 100% conclusive. Gamers in the USA had Dragon magazine for this purpose. But not everybody will have had access to Dragon. Here in the UK, I've never seen a physical copy of it. I'm rambling, so back to the main topic. I'm going to talk about the 1st edition AD&D Bard, an early iteration of what would be described as a prestige class in later editions of the game. It was an optional class that appeared in the appendices of the player's handbook. The Bard was a jack of all trades. The rules stated that in order to become a bard, a PC must begin life as a fighter. After reaching at least 5th level and before attaining 8th level, they must then switch to become a thief, before finally becoming a bard after thieving for a while. It all seems quite clear then, but it wasn't. The language Gygax used and the mechanics of the class have caused years of debate. It's a polarizing class. Some love it. Others hate it. Some claim it's overpowered. But what is actually true? Let's look at the evidence and try some objective analysis. And for this I have help in the form of the 1st edition Rogues Gallery. There's my copy. £3 from the UK Games Expo. Changing one's class is known in 1st edition parlance as dual classing. It is distinct from multi-classing, which is beginning with multiple classes. Only humans are allowed to dual class. Only humans can change their class after they have started. But the player's handbook states that half-elves may become bards. Thus logic dictates that bards are a special case, an example of specific rules overriding general ones. The key to my interpretation of how to handle the class is this fact. The rules state that the character must first achieve at least 5th level in fighter and switch to thief prior to attaining 8th level. Thus, the fighter level range is 5th to 7th. Rogues Gallery backs this up, as all example characters in there are listed as having level 5 through to 7 in fighter. The player's handbook goes on to say that they become a thief, and sometime between levels 5 and 9 they then make the switch to begin clerical studies as druids, and this is the step that affirms them as a bard. Key here is between 5th and 9th levels, meaning 6th through to 8th. Again, the Rogues Gallery confirms this to be the case. All the example bards are level 6, 7 or 8 in Thief. Rules for dual classing state that in order to regain the abilities of the first class, the character's levels in the second class must exceed those of the first. But we've already ascertained that bards are an exception to the dual classing rules. So, must the thief levels exceed the fighter levels? The answer, backed up by the Rogues Gallery again, is a firm no, as there are multiple PCs in there with thief levels equal to or lower than their fighter levels. Two pieces of direct evidence now that bards do not have to follow the rules for dual classing. I wish Gygax had stated this outright, but hey ho, such was his way. So now we move on to equipment. Bards have limited access to weapons and armour. When does this apply to them? When they become bards, or throughout their career? The rules for dual classing are clear on this, but we already know now that they are not intended to be viewed as dual class characters. My interpretation is that because bards break the default rules, the player must declare the intention to become a bard when the character is first created, and thus the weapon and armour limitations apply throughout their entire adventuring careers. Even while learning as fighters, their armour should be limited to leather or magical chain, and they cannot use a shield. But what about their time as a thief and the potential impact of wearing magical chain on their thieving abilities? Here, I defer to the general rules that they cannot use those abilities while wearing that armour. This might be construed as being harsh, I know, but I do then alleviate it somewhat. I allow them to continue to fight using the fighter tables, because they are not beholden to the dual classing rules which disallow this. For me, this interpretation is logical, but you may disagree. Let me know in the comments below. So now I come to the criticisms of the class. Do they hold water? The first one, a common one, that they get too many hit points. The Bard is an incredibly hard class to qualify for. The player must roll 4 scores of at least 15, then another of at least 12, and the final one must be at least 10. Are you aware of how low the odds of this are? Use 3d6 in order, and it is less than 20 times in every million. We always used, and still use, 4d6 rearranged to taste. It's the most common system that I've seen in games, and a lot of people do talk about using it throughout. I know others use other methods. So obviously, using 4d6 rearrange, the odds then become a lot higher. But they are still very low indeed. Sadly, I can't find the site where I've seen the exact data on the odds, but trust me, it's still less than 1%. So with these stat limitations, which are 15 or higher in strength, wisdom, dexterity and charisma, intelligence at least 12, and constitution at least 10, how many bards are going to have a constitution of 15 or higher and thus qualify for hit point bonuses? I'll let you answer that one. On average, at 5th level fighter, a bard will have about 28 hit points. A few more in my games, because I do start characters off at 1st level with maximum hit points, but not a lot more. We're talking 32. 39 hit points is the average at 7th level. Then they switch to Thief. Now here's one of the annoying vagaries. Do they follow dual classing hit point rules now? Given that they ignore dual classing rules for other aspects of the class. Sorry Bard fans, but I say yes. And Rogue's Gallery backs me up, as the hit points listed for the characters in there are all at very sensible levels, which gives the logical conclusion that they've been not getting the extra d6 for each Thief level in addition to the Fighter levels. What is clear is that Bards do get hit points when they start advancing in Bard levels, though these do stop at level 11 to become just 1 hit point per level. A Bard at level 7 Fighter, level 7 Thief, level 11 Bard, that's a lot of adventuring, a lot of experience, will have on average 74 hit points. In my experience, that's about as many as a typical 10th level fighter, as more than half of the fighter PCs in my games using the 4d6 method have decent constitutions. So, are Bard hit points really that excessive? No, they aren't. They could be if the player cheats their stat rolls, but in a fair game, it's nothing to worry about. Criticism 2. The Bard is overpowered. I say no here again. Bear in mind that demi-humans can have the versatility of up to 3 classes, half-elves and elves being the examples there. A Bard's fighting ability is forever defined by their fighter level. Thus a base Thaco, I'm using Thaco to illustrate this more easily, a base Thaco of 16 or 14. When fighting high-level enemies, this is pretty poor. With their strict armour limitations, their armour class will be unlikely to ever be particularly special. They do get great saving throws, but they're going to need them. So yes, they have incredible versatility, but is it any more than a half-elven fighter mage cleric or an elven fighter mage thief? They have competent fighting ability, adequate thieving skills, and a relatively small number of druid spells. They don't advance their druid spells as quickly as pure druids do. But overpowered, they are not. At least so long as they're played within the spirit and intention of the rules. They are no more overpowered, really, than a traditional multi-classed elf or half-elf with 3 classes. The final criticism I see is they don't really fit. Now this might be associated with them breaking the rules and a typical grog response to trying to run them by the rules. Yes, they are an odd combination of abilities, but for me, the idea of a wandering storyteller or entertainer is the essence of a fantasy game based on medieval Europe, and that is what D&D was. The skald, the minstrel, these are largely responsible for many of the tales we know and love. Those Norse legends, those myths, they all come from these type of individuals. So love it or loathe it, ban it or allow it, the Bard is, to me, what AD&D was about. Ferociously difficult to achieve, with lower hit points, limitations on fighting ability, armour, weapon usage, and so on. A life journey of struggle, difficult to get through those early levels, but the ability to tell great tales at the end of it all. Sadly though, I've never played one. Or indeed, I don't think I've ever seen a player develop one properly from scratch. as despite using the 4d6 method, I've only ever seen the stat requirements achieved twice. And those players decided to make a monk and a cavalier. Oh well, I guess I'll just have to use the Bard as sporadic pre-gens for one-shots, where they have most definitely not proven to be overpowered. Well, that's been me, the Old Geek, for another video. I do have another review on the way very shortly, but until then, see ya!